Okay, now we're going to talk about a few new identities. All right. Now we've got identities that are of the following nature. They're called the angle addition identities. Okay, the or the addition formula identities. Okay, and they are as follows. And they're in they're pertain to how do we deal with expressions like sine of a plus b, the sine of a minus b, the cosine of a plus b, and the cosine of a minus b. Now, one thing for sure, and we'll actually illustrate this with an example. You can't imagine that it's going to be as simple as to say the sine of a plus b is equal to the sine of a plus the sine of b. That just seems a little bit too simple, doesn't it? You'd like to think so, but I'm going to tell you it's not. Okay, so let's do that by means of a counter example, and then come up and show you what those what the actual formula is. So I'm going to say let's talk about the sine of pi over 2, 90 degrees. Okay, and of course you know the sine of pi over 2 is equal to 1. Now, we also know that pi over 2, or 90 degrees, is, pi over 6 plus pi over 3, right? Okay, so then if the sine of pi over 2 is 1, what is the sine of pi over 6 plus pi over 3? Well, we're here to show you that it is not equal to the sine of pi over 6 plus the sine of pi over 3. It is not that, because the sine of pi over 6 is 1/2, and the sine of pi over 3 is root 3 over 2, and of course then that sum is 1 plus the square root of 3 over 2, which clearly is not equal to 1. So this is not the identity. By any means, that is not the identity. Now, so you can presume safely then each of these is not simply going to collapse. The sine of A minus the sine of B. Okay, so what are they? All right. Well, the easy way to remember them, and you want to kind of remember them, is I actually start with the cosine first, because the cosine will tell you, okay, C for cosine, O for opposite, S for sine. So that means, okay, the cosine of A plus B is going to be rewritten as the cosine of A times the cosine of B, opposite the sine, so that's going to be minus the sine of A times the sine of B. Okay? So that's the one expression for the cosine. I know we give an example of sine, but we'll get to that and illustrate that for you as well, okay? And cosine, again, is the easier one because it spells it out. Cosine opposite sine. Cosine opposite sine. So again, it's cosine of A, cosine of B, opposite the sine plus sine of A, sine of B. Okay? Now, what about the sine? Okay? Well, the sine is going to be kind of the flip of that. All right? So whereas these are consistent with the functions cosine, cosine, sine, and sine, this up here is not. Okay? So the S stands for the same in terms of the same sign. So these will be with a plus, but this will be a sine A, sine B, okay, plus sine A sine A cosine B plus cosine A sine B. All right? And as for sine, the only thing that's telling you is it's the same sign. Okay? It's sine of A cosine of B minus the cosine of A sine of B. Okay? So those are the identities for the addition formulas. All right, so now that we have this guy down here, we're going to illustrate for you that the sine of pi over 2 expressed as pi over 6 plus pi over 3, we're going to use this identity to kind of illustrate that we will get that value of 1. So here we go, okay? So evaluate the sine of pi over 6 plus pi over 3, okay? Which, as we said, okay, the only S is for the same. So it's a plus sign connecting the sine of pi over 6 times the cosine of pi over 3 plus the cosine of pi over 6 times the sine of pi over 3. Okay, now of course those are all values you should remember. This is 1/2 cosine of root 3, okay, is likewise, okay, cosine of root 3. Cosine of pi over 3 is, of course, the same as the sine of pi over 6, which is 1/2, plus the cosine of pi over 6, which is root 3 over 2, and the sine of pi over 3, which is root 3 over 2. Now, of course, this gives us 1/4. This gives us 3/4, which of course gives us 1, which we said was analogous to the sine of pi over 2. Okay? So, what we're going to do is exercises pertaining to these group of identities, the addition formulas for sine, cosine. Easiest to remember the cosine. Cosine spells it out for you. Cosine, cosine, opposite, sine, sine. Cosine A, cosine B, opposite, plus sine. This sine is taken its opposite, plus sine, sine. The ones you're going to have to remember the most is the sine, which is going to be, mix it up, sine, cosine, plus cosine, sine, sine, cosine, minus cosine, sine. So that is those identities, and we'll have another video to illustrate some examples of where we're going to use those, and of course those identities will also be featured in the PowerPoint slides. Okay, so that's it for this video.